They told me to resign by lunch. I had my patents notarized by 10. By the time their demo lights came up, a single null root error detonated their entire $600 million roadmap. And when legal finally pressed play on that recording, the room heard my boss's own voice handing me the checkmate. My name is Bella Phillips. The Monday all-hands at Noventrix Dynamics was already a special kind of corporate purgatory, 200-plus faces trapped in the digital amber of a Zoom grid, most of them probably still in their pajamas, all pretending to listen. I was in my basement lab, the only place I really worked, a concrete room that smelled like ozone and hot electronics. The hum of my private servers was a more productive sound than anything that ever came out of these meetings. Then she appeared, Mara Kincaid, our new, surgically enhanced VP of Strategy. She was beamed onto our screens from some glass-walled conference room on the 45th floor, a place where the air was probably filtered twice and tasted like money. Her introduction was a slick, pre-recorded video package full of soaring orchestral music and buzzwords like synergy, refocus, and future-proofing. She was a corporate Grim Reaper dressed in a $2,000 blazer, brought in to streamline operations, which is MBA speak for find out who and what is disposable. I am just so thrilled to be joining the Noventrix family, she said, her voice a perfectly modulated, antiseptic instrument. She clicked to her first slide. Alignment directives. A collective, muted sigh seemed to ripple through the webcams. Alignment is the word management uses when they've decided creativity is too messy and they want everyone marching in single file, preferably off a cliff. To foster a more collaborative and dynamic environment, she continued, we will be sunsetting our hybrid work-from-home schedules and welcoming everyone back to the office, full-time, starting next week. I watched as, one by one, the little camera icons clicked off, the corporate equivalent of 100 people groaning and slumping in their chairs, a mandatory, full-time return, not a discussion, an order, dropped on us on a Monday morning with less than a week's notice. It wasn't about collaboration, it was about control. It was about justifying the absurd lease on that glass tower and ensuring all our keystrokes were logged on their network. But that was just the appetizer. Mara, smiling her bright, toothy, predator smile, clicked to slide number 3. The title was Prototype Centralization. My blood didn't just run cold, it crystallized. The sub-bullets were the real poison. All RD source code, engineering notebooks, and associated timestamps to be migrated to a new, unified shared repository. The justification, floating at the bottom in a cheerful sans-serif font, was a single, insulting word, collaboration. IM was the lead systems architect in logistics intelligence. I'm 38 years old. I've been in this game long enough to know exactly what I was looking at. This wasn't collaboration. This was a harvest. This was a meticulously planned paper trail laundering scheme. They wanted to pour everyone's work finished, half-finished, brilliant, and terrible into one digital vat. They'd stir it up, slap a new project name on it, and then file a dozen patents claiming the company invented it. It's the fastest way to build a robust IP portfolio by strip mining the brains of your employees, obscuring the actual origin of the ideas, and daring anyone to prove otherwise. Mara started talking again, her voice shifting into that syrupy, practiced cadence that HR departments mistake for empathy. She was so aware that this was a significant transition. She valued the passion we all brought to our personal projects. It was a nauseating performance. Every soft, understanding word was stapled directly to an ironclad threat. This was the classic, smile then squeeze. She knew we hated this. She didn't care. She just had to perform the ritual of caring for the legal recording of the all hands. My gaze drifted from her perfectly lit face on my monitor to the blinking green lights of the server rack in the corner of my lab. My pilot, the Edge Adaptive Freight Routing System, the thing Noventrix had been bragging about to investors for the last 9 months. The program that had beaten its internal forecasts for 3 straight quarters, saving the logistics division millions. 90% of its core logic, the real magic, was written right here, on my own hardware. After midnight, on a network firewalled off from Noventrix, fueled by stale coffee and the sheer, stubborn refusal to let a brilliant idea die in a committee meeting where some marketing VP said it was too complex. The company loved the golden eggs. They just hated that they didn't own the goose, and now they'd come to gut it. Mara clicked again. An addendum. Just a few words, but they landed like a punch to the diaphragm. Origin review for patent consolidation effective immediately. My molars ground together so hard I tasted enamel. Consolidation. Not filing, not protection. Consolidation. It's the vinyl glove a surgeon pulls on before an amputation. They weren't just coming for our future work. They were coming to retroactively steal our past. This was the linchpin. They needed to establish a new, legal origin for all pre-existing code. And that origin was going to be their new, centralized, company-controlled repository. My mouse hovered over the mute icon. My heart was hammering, but not with fear. It was the cold, clean thud of an engine engaging. This was it, the pivot point. I knew this day was coming. I just didn't think she'd be stupid enough to announce it in public. I clicked the icon. The little red line through the microphone vanished. A clarifying question. Mara. The entire Zoom grid went still. 200 faces, and not one of them was moving. You don't interrupt the new VP. You just don't. Her smile tightened, just a fraction at the edges. Bella, she said, acknowledging me. This new centralization policy, I said, keeping my voice level, academic, as if I were asking about a documentation standard. Does it also cover projects developed entirely off hours on personal hardware, with no company resources utilized? I could see the gears turning behind her eyes. She was a VP. She was smart. She knew this was a trap, but she was also arrogant. And she was on a recorded all-hands call where she had to establish dominance. She couldn't deflect. Her smile didn't waver. It just got brighter, more artificial. The high-beam smile designed to blind you. Bella, we believe all innovation spurred by your work at Noventrix contributes to our ecosystem. The corporate speak was so thick I could barely breathe it. If it's adjacent to the Noventrix roadmap, then yes, it falls under the new collaboration policy. It's ours. Ours? There it was. The royal we. As if she, in her glass box in the sky, had any part in the code I wrote at 3/8 sem, adjacent, a word so vague, so legally pliable. It could mean anything from a direct competitor to a grocery list app I coded on a Saturday. I didn't blink. I didn't look away from my webcam. I had to pin her. I needed the recording to have it, sharp and undeniable. Just to be crystal clear, Mara, I pressed. Even with zero company time logged, zero company equipment used, a project built entirely on personal property. The silence stretched. It was beautiful. I could feel the entire RD department holding its collective breath. I had put her in a box. If she said no, she created the exact loophole her entire policy was designed to close. Every engineer with a side project would drive a truck through it. If she said yes, she exposed the sheer, naked, brazen greed of the company's IP grab. She chose yes, but she wrapped it in a threat. The empathy mask evaporated. Her voice, still impossibly, terrifyingly bright, cut through the digital silence. Bella, we're all team players here. We're aligning our strategies for the future. She leaned into her camera. If you don't like the new policy, you can always resign. The call went utterly still, the digital equivalent of a grenade rolling across the boardroom table. She just told a lead architect to quit, in front of everyone. She had just drawn a line in the sand, assuming I was on the wrong side of it, unarmed. She thought she'd just won. She thought she'd just made a public example of me, a warning to everyone else. I let the silence sit there for one beat, two, long enough for the finality of her words to burn into the recording. Then I smiled back. A real smile. The first one I'd had all day. The kind with teeth. Thanks for the exit strategy. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't slam the laptop shut that's for dramatic movies and people who lose. I just moved my mouse to the bright red Leave Meeting button and clicked. The grid of silent, horrified faces vanished. My screen went back to my desktop. I was alone in my lab. The silence was absolute, save for the low, steady, reassuring hum of my own fans, my own machines, my own work. I stood up. I unplugged the Noventrix-issued laptop. It was a dead plastic brick on my desk. I coiled the power cord neatly. I placed it in a standard cardboard banker's box that had been sitting empty in the corner for 6 months. I opened my desk drawer and took out my plastic ID badge. The one with the stupid, stylized Noventrix logo that always looked like a stock chart crashing to zero. I dropped it on top of the laptop. I added a few company-branded pens and a stress ball I'd never squeezed. 1 box. That's all the office that had ever made it into my home. That's all the part of me they ever really had. I carried the box up the basement stairs. As I was walking to my front door, my personal phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. A text message from Lena Hart, my protege, a brilliant, young systems engineer, still optimistic enough to believe that meritocracy was a real thing in corporate America. I'd been trying to shield her from the worst of the acid, but class was in session. Her text was frantic, a jumble of punctuation. "Where did you go?" "Are you okay, Bella?" I paused on my front step. The air outside was cool and clean. I could tell her the truth. I could tell her to run, to get out. I could tell her to follow me, but that wouldn't be the right play. She was smart. She needed to see this. She needed to learn the real lesson, the one they don't teach in computer science classes, the lesson of strategy. I typed back 2 words, stay, observe. I hit send. I put the phone in my pocket, got in my car, and turned the key. I didn't drive toward the glittering glass tower of the Noventrix campus to drop off my box. Not yet. I had a 10 o'clock appointment. I put the car in drive. The banker's box, holding the plastic corpse of my Noventrix career, was riding shotgun. It felt light, insignificant. Beside it, on the passenger seat, was a single 9 by 12-inch manila envelope. It was already sealed. A prepaid postage label was affixed, addressed to General Counsel, Noventrix Dynamics, with the 45th floor suite number. My personal return address was in the corner. I drafted the letter inside it last week. A polite, formal note of resignation citing a divergence in strategic vision. It was my contingency resignation, the one I'd use if they hadn't been stupid enough to fire me on a recorded line. Now, it was just a souvenir. The real bomb was already being armed. I bypassed the interstate ramp that led toward the Noventrix tower. Dropping off that box was a low-priority errand. My destination was 20 minutes in the opposite direction, in a nondescript brick building sandwiched between a check-cashing place and a vegan bakery. StrataWorks Co-working. It sounded generic, anonymous, which is exactly why I'd chosen it. I bypassed the main desk and walked down a hallway to a door marked Danner Legal Services. The 10 o'clock I'd mentioned to no one. Phil Danner wasn't a lawyer. He was a notary, a very good, very discreet notary who specialized in complex document verification. He was a man in his late 50s with thin wrists and the kind of eyes that miss nothing. He didn't waste time on hellos. His office was small, windowless, and smelled like archival paper and strong tea. "Ms. Phillips," he said, his voice a low rumble. He motioned to the heavy oak table. "You have the stack." I opened my briefcase and laid out the folders. He handled them like a professional card dealer at a high-stakes table, his movements economical and precise. This wasn't paperwork. It was ordnance. On top were the applications, 3 separate provisional patents, ready for electronic filing the moment we were done. First, Spectre route, my predictive, self-correcting routing core, the brain. The part that didn't just react to a traffic jam, but anticipated it 10 moves ahead by analyzing peripheral data weather, local events, even social media sentiment. Second, Flux balancer, the nervous system, load redistribution under cascading failure. This was the module that kept the network alive when everything else died. It managed a graceful degradation, ensuring that even if 10% of the fleet went dark, the other 90% absorbed the load seamlessly, without a single packet loss. Third, quiet quorum, the secret sauce, a shadow consensus logic for fault detection. It allowed nodes in the network to vote on the validity of a data packet, identifying and isolating a bad actor or a corrupted sensor before it could poison the main system. These three pieces were the edge-adaptive freight routing Noventrix loved so much, and Mara had just publicly claimed them as ours. Phil knew the patents themselves were just the cover sheet. The real work was in the exhibits that backed them. He started sliding the associated documents into stacks, his fingers moving with that croupier-like snap. "Stack A," he murmured. "Device IDs." I handed him the list. Every laptop, every server, every router, every single piece of hardware used in the development, serial numbers, MAC addresses, all cross-referenced with receipts of purchase from my personal bank accounts. Nothing from the Noventrix supply chain. Stack B, Git digests, a printout of the SHA-256 hashes for every major commit, for all three projects, stretching back 11 months. Each one provided an immutable digital fingerprint of the code at a specific moment in time. Stack C, mirrors. I handed him 2 encrypted USB drives containing full bit-for-bit copies of the off-site repositories, the real repositories, not the sandboxed, crippled versions I'd left on the company network. Stack D, self-correspondence. A bound volume of my weekly self-email digests. Every Friday night, I'd sent a summary of my progress, attaching key code snippets to a private, non-company email address. The headers of those emails, with their independent, third-party timestamps from the mail server, were legally robust. And Stack E, he said, tapping the last folder, witnesses. This was the part Nora, my lawyer, had insisted on. Digital trails are great, she'd said. But juries are human. They need to see faces. Witness number 1. Miles Ortega. I handed Phil the stack of signed and time-stamped review sheets. Miles was an adjunct professor at the local polytechnic, teaching advanced algorithms. He was underpaid, overqualified, and had the most beautifully cynical mind I'd ever met. Once a month, I'd buy him coffee and let him tear my logic apart. He'd attack the weak points, scribble equations in the margins, and then sign and date the printout. Reviewed by Dr. M. Ortega. He was my hostile, independent verifier. Witness number 2, Cheryl Schur-Klein. This was the one Phil lingered on. A sworn, notarized affidavit. Cher was the night manager at the 24-hour diner where I did half my early conceptual work. She'd refilled my coffee 1,000 times while I turned a stack of napkins into a network diagram. The affidavit stated, under penalty of perjury, that she'd seen me building the Spectre root architecture on my personal laptop, alone, month after month, long before Mara Kincaid ever had a Noventrix parking pass. She'd even attached a copy of the original napkin sketch I'd given her as a joke, the one she'd taped up by the register. It was dated. Phil nodded, impressed. Nora's work, I confirmed. Nora Vale, my IP attorney. She'd spent 5 years slaying patent trolls in Texas and had a special kind of righteous fury for corporate overreach. She had already pre-drafted the cease and desist letter. It wasn't just a letter. It was a small novel, complete with exhibits A through H, mapping my notarized Git commits directly onto the innovations Noventrix was currently touting in their investor decks. An interference notice for the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office was ready to file. I added the last few items to the table, the development logs, meticulous and detailed, showing 0 network traffic or logins to any Noventrix server during development hours. A folder of hardware receipts, the server rack, the custom-built workstation, even the firewall, all paid by Bella Phillips, not Noventrix. My favorite piece, a highlighted copy of my home's utility bills for the past year, the power bills. I'd pointed out the massive, consistent spikes in kilowatt hours between midnight and 4 a.m., overnight compile spikes, I'd written in the margin, the physical proof of my sleepless nights. Finally, a single, small USB drive, black, labeled with a Dymo sticker, Jan 17 origin reel. "This one," I said, "is special." Phil slid it into a standalone, air-gapped laptop. He played the file. It was a start-to-finish time-lapse. I had mounted a cheap webcam in my basement lab. It captured the entire 11-month build. It showed me assembling the server rack. It showed me whiteboarding the first diagrams. It showed the code compiling on my screen, night after night. And in the corner of the frame, always visible, was a digital radio clock. The display didn't just show the time and date. It scrolled the call letters of a local AM news station, providing an unforgeable, continuous, third-party time code for the entire build. From a blank whiteboard on January 17th to a fully functioning demo, Phil watched it for a full minute, a slow smile spreading. "Ms. Phillips," he said, "you are a very thorough woman." He closed the file, and then the real work began, the part I was paying him for. He took out his embosser and his ink stamp. Thud. A heavy, satisfying, final sound. He stamped the first page of the Spectre Route exhibit list. Thud. The Flux Balancer witness statement. Thud. The Quiet Quorum hardware receipts. Thud, thud, thud. Each stamp was a nail in Mara's coffin. He wasn't just notarizing. He was consecrating. He was certifying that he, a licensed officer of the state, had seen this evidence, in this form, on this date. He meticulously packaged everything. The origin reel USB, the witness affidavits, the power bills, the diner napkin. He slid the entire collection into a heavy-duty fireproof evidence bag, sealed it with tamper-proof tape, and then stamped the seal itself. He placed that bag into a small, fireproof case and locked it with a key. He slid the key across the table to me. "This stays in my vault," he said. "The copies go to Nora." He had a redundant courier packet already waiting. A full copy of everything, bound and indexed, was booked for secure, same-day delivery to Nora Vale's vault. My arsenal was now duplicated and distributed. I paid his invoice, cash. We shook hands. "Good luck, Ms. Phillips," he said. "Luck has nothing to do with it. Phil?" I walked out of StrataWorks into the late morning sun, my briefcase significantly lighter. It was 10:54 a.m. Mara's deadline for my resignation was lunch. I was early. I pulled out my personal phone. 23 new messages, Slack notifications going crazy, texts from Lena, from other engineers, even an urgent calendar invite from my now former director. I read none of them. I silenced the phone and put it in the glove box. My first instinct was to call Nora, to text Lena, to post something, but I held back. I had just laid a meticulous, patient, 11-month trap. The worst thing I could do now was to make a sound. The silence wasn't an absence of action. It was strategic terrain. Let them wonder. Let them panic. Let them fill that silence with their own mistakes. They had just thrown a grenade and were waiting for the explosion. They had no idea I'd already spent a year digging a bunker, and their fuse was about to burn back and light their own demo on fire. This didn't start with Mara. It started 11 months ago, in a different beige conference room, with a different VP. I had just presented my white paper. Proactive network correction for last-mile logistics. It was dense. It was data-heavy. And it was, in my opinion, revolutionary. It proposed a system that didn't just react to supply chain failures, but anticipated them. The VP of sales at the time, a guy named Henderson, had stared at the final slide for a long time. Then he'd taken off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Bella," he'd said, his voice thick with the exhaustion of a man who only cares about the next quarter. "This is academic. It's too complex for the sales team to demo. They sell simple. They sell dashboards. This is a black box." He shelved it. "Too complex." He said we'd circle back in the next fiscal year. I nodded, smiled, and said I understood the timeline constraints. I took my white paper, went back to my desk. and emailed a PDF copy to my personal, encrypted address. That night, I went home and started building it. Henderson had given me the greatest gift imaginable. He'd officially, on the record, rejected the idea. He'd made it unwanted, and in the world of corporate IP, unwanted is a synonym for orphaned. I was more than happy to adopt it. I initiated what I called the split. Day job Bella was a model employee. She showed up for the 9 a.m. stand-ups. She optimized the legacy code. She debugged the dashboards Henderson loved so much. She collected her paycheck, which paid the mortgage and bought the hardware. Day job Bella was a ghost in the machine, efficient, quiet, and fundamentally hollow. Night lab Bella was the architect. My basement lab became a clean room, a fortress of solitude. The first rule: no cross-contamination. I bought a new laptop, a powerful, matte black workstation, paid for in cash that would never, ever touch the Noventrix guest Wi-Fi. It would never log into their VPN. It would never see my company credentials, my personal phone. The one Noventrix paid a stipend for, it went into a signal-blocking Faraday pouch the second I walked down the basement stairs. The lab ran on its own isolated network, connected to a dedicated internet line under a DBA I'd set up for my consulting work. It wasn't paranoia, it was infrastructure. From the very first line of code, I wasn't just building a system, I was building a case. I wrote what I called my doomsday notes. I kept a separate set of documents, written in plain English, no jargon. I imagined a jury box filled with 12 people who thought the cloud was made of water. This module, Flux Balancer, solves this specific commercial pain point when a delivery truck breaks down. The current system takes 15 minutes to reroute. Flux Balancer does it in under 3 seconds. This saves X amount of fuel and Y amount of late delivery fines. Every feature was tied to a $sign. I was writing the script for my future lawyer. My commit hygiene became a ritual. Every night, before I shut down, I'd make small, legible commits. No misc updates or bug fix. Every commit message was a full sentence. Feature added consensus logic to quiet quorum to reject anomalous sensor pings. Then I'd run a hash chain on the repository. Paste that unique alphanumeric string into a physical, hardbound paper notebook and date it. Once a week, I'd take that notebook to the post office and mail a photocopy of the new pages to my own P.O. box, a sealed, postmarked envelope. It's the poor man's timestamp, redundant, tactile, and incredibly difficult to challenge in court. It backed up the digital digests Phil Danner was now holding. I knew I couldn't be a lone genius, in court. Just looks like a liar. I needed witnesses. First, I needed a technical witness. I found Miles Ortega. I'd seen him give a lecture on algorithmic efficiency, and he was brutal. He was perfect. I offered to buy him unlimited coffee and breakfast once a month at the campus coffee shop. The deal was simple. He'd get to tell me my baby was ugly. He'd sit there, stirring his black coffee, my code printouts spread across the table. This fallback logic is lazy. Phillips, he'd say, his red pen slashing across a page. You're assuming a single point of failure. What if the whole region fails? What if the data center floods? Your nodes will panic. They'll chatter themselves to death. He was a mean, brilliant, unpaid grad school examiner, and every time, after he'd finished savaging my work, I'd make the changes, and he'd sign and date the bottom of the review sheet. Stress tested by Dr. Ortega. His signature was the first external validation. Second, I needed a civilian witness, someone who could place me, the human, in a specific time and place, doing the work. That was Cher. The 24-hour Starlight Diner became my second office. The coffee was terrible, the lighting was worse, but the booths were huge and no one bothered me. Cher, the night manager, watched the whole thing grow. It started on a napkin, literally. I was sketching the network topology of Spectre Root, and she'd come over to refill my mug. "What's that?" she'd asked. "Homework?" "Kind of," I'd said. "A roadmap for smarter trucks." That napkin sketch, stained with coffee rings, became the first exhibit. Over the next few months, she watched that napkin sketch become a whiteboard diagram I'd bring in. She watched the whiteboard diagram become a simulation harness running on my laptop. She saw the aha moment when the first simulation ran clean. She was the witness to the origin, the human timestamp, her affidavit, which she'd signed with a flourish, wasn't just legal paper, it was the story of the work, told by someone who had nothing to gain from it. By month 6, the system was alive, my sandbox. Running on my $2,000 server rack wasn't just working, it was beating public benchmarks for logistics routing by double-digit margins. It was fast, it was resilient, it was beautiful, and it was time to weaponize it. I quietly bought 3 hardware security modules, or HSMs, little USB dongles that look like flash drives, but are actually miniature digital vaults. I used them to sign my build artifacts. Every compiled piece of code Spectre root, Flux Balancer. Quiet Quorum was now cryptographically signed by a private key that existed only on that hardware, in my possession. It was the digital equivalent of an artist signing a painting. Anyone at Noventrix could copy the code, but they could never, ever sign it. They could never prove it was theirs. That's when I called Nora Vale. I didn't just ask her to file patents. I hired her to do a hostile company audit. Assume Noventrix is evil. Nora. I told her over our first encrypted video call. Assume they find out, and they want to steal this. They have a building full of lawyers. What clauses in my employment contract will they use to rip it out of my hands? Nora, with her sharp eyes and sharper haircut, smiled the smile of a predator slayer. "Oh, this is my favorite game," she'd said. A week later, she sent me the audit. It was terrifying. The non-compete, the intellectual property assignment clause, the duties of loyalty. They had a dozen hooks they could sink into me. "But," she'd said, "they're all based on a standard template, and standard templates have standard flaws." And then she found it. The crack. The one beautiful, fatal flaw. "Mara Kincaid," Nora said, her voice electric. "Your new VP of Strategy." She came in hot. She insisted all new hires and existing senior staff re-sign their NDAs and employment agreements to align with her new vision. Did you sign it? I had, 3 months ago, a mandatory DocuSign I'd clicked through, annoyed at the new corporate jargon. She slipped in a tweak, Nora said, sharing her screen. She highlighted a single sentence in the IP assignment clause. It was a subtle change, designed to strengthen the company's claim on work done in scope. But in doing so, the lawyers who drafted it had, by necessity, added a new carve-out to loosen the company's claims over pre-existing, off-contract, and non-derivative IP. It was an ironic, beautiful mistake. In her rush to build a legal fortress, Mara had accidentally left the postern gate unlocked and unguarded. She'd tried to claim everything, and in doing so, had created the very language that would allow me to protect my thing. "This," Nora had said, tapping her pen on the screen, "is our entire plan. This single sentence is the crack we are going to widen. We will widen it with your notarized timestamps. We will widen it with your independent witnesses. We will build a documented, continuous, unbroken chain of evidence that proves your work is pre-existing, off-contract, and non-derivative. We will make it so airtight that by the time they realize what you've done, they'll be suffocating." From that day on, my strategy was set. The plan was no longer defensive. It was offensive, and it changed how I worked at my day job. I stopped being a ghost. I started contributing more. I built interfaces. I wrote technical specifications. I created beautiful, elaborate, empty stubs in the Noventrix repositories. I built the house, but left out the foundation, the plumbing, and the electricity. The code in their system would look like my pilot. It had the same function names, the same API calls, but the core logic, the brain. It was just a black hole. It was a to-do comment. It was a function that returned 0. I gave them the perfect, shiny, hollow shell, and then I locked the real work, the real value, in my basement. I put locks on my own house. And then I waited for Mara Kincaid to mistake my compliance for submission. I waited for her to get arrogant, to get greedy. I only had to wait 11 months. I was offline, not just logged out. I was a digital ghost. My corporate credentials had been vaporized within an hour of my departure. My company phone, dropped in the same box as my laptop, was a brick. My personal phone remained silent. Notifications disabled. For the first time in a decade, my life was my own. And yet, I had never been more connected to the inner workings of Noventrix. I didn't need a VPN. I had my imagination, which was armed with the truth, and I had the public internet. It took exactly 48 hours for the PR machine to spin up. Mara didn't just replace me. She erased me and threw a party on my grave. I saw it first on LinkedIn, a slick, animated banner, all polished chrome and data streams, unfurled on the Noventrix company page. Introducing Project Orbital, the future of autonomous logistics. Orbital, of course, something vast, expensive, and mostly empty space. It was the perfect brand for her. The post was a masterpiece of moonshot bravado. It spoke of revolutionizing the supply chain, of hyper-adaptive networks, and AI-driven decision-making. It was my white paper, translated from dense engineering into airy, breathless marketing copy. They even had renders glowing blue trucks moving on a holographic map of North America. It was beautiful, it was thrilling, and it was a complete, categorical lie. I knew exactly what they were building on. They weren't building at all. They were decorating. I knew they had forked my old sandbox, the one Henderson had shelved 11 months prior, the one I'd left behind, a perfectly preserved fossil. It had the interfaces. It had the API stubs. It had my name all over the Git history. It was the before picture, and they were trying to sell it as the after. I could picture the scene, Mara, in an all-hands realignment meeting, pointing to my hollow shell and telling the team, "This is our starting point. Ship it. Somewhere in that glass tower. A junior dev. Let's call him Byron Hale." I remembered his name from a code review. Always asked good questions was probably the first to find the trap. He would have pulled the orbital branch. He would have run a diff against the main branch, the one I'd last touched. He'd see the origin. He'd see Bella Phillips. He'd see the dates, all predating Mara's new policy. Then he'd look at the new branch. He'd see the new project name, the new headers, and he'd see that the logic was gone. I could hear the Slack pings in my head, the quiet, frantic whispers in the engineering channel. Byron Hale. Hey, does anyone have the core logic for the flux balancer? The stub in the orbital branch just returns null. Senior dev. Check the old sandbox. Bella built that. Byron Hale, I did. The old sandbox has the same stub. The interface is defined. But the implementation, it's just a to-do comment. A beat of silence. Then, the team lead, probably under pressure from a project manager who was under pressure from Mara, would type the inevitable, "Team lead. We don't have time to rewrite it from scratch. The demo is in 3 weeks. Byron Hale." But it doesn't do anything. Team lead. Make it look like it does. We'll stub the data, hardcode the results. Deadlines are more important than details right now. This was the moment. The moment the entire engineering team became complicit. The moment they collectively agreed to commit fraud. Deadlines over details was Mara's mantra, and it was about to fly them directly into the side of a mountain. The heat was rising. I knew their test coverage pipeline. I'd helped design it. The simulators would light up green on the most basic happy path tests. Does the function calculate root exist? Yes. Check. Does it accept 3 arguments? Yes. Check. Does it return a value? Yes. Check. Build passes. But the stress tests, the integration tests, the cascading failure scenarios I had built my entire reputation on, I imagined Byron running the regional failure simulation. In my real system, Flux Balancer would spin up, reroute 1,000 virtual trucks, and balance the load in under a second. In their orbital system, the stub would be called, it would return 0, the upstream system, expecting a complex data object, would receive 0, an unhandled exception, A null root reference, a system-wide crash, the test coverage metric, once a healthy 90+%, would have plummeted to 30. The build status would be a wall of screaming red, and that was just the code. I poured another cup of coffee in my quiet, sunlit kitchen. I wondered who was getting the phone call from procurement. I had kept all the vendor secrets in my head, a deliberate, walking security flaw. The specific API keys for the real-time weather data feeds, the negotiated discount rate with our satellite bandwidth provider, the private, unpublished endpoint for the Port Authority data. None of it was in Confluence. None of it was in a shared drive. It was in my head, and I was at home, watering my plants. I pictured some poor guy in procurement. Frantic. "What do you mean? Our account is suspended. Bella always handled the renewal." "Bella who? Oh, she's not with you anymore. Well, the introductory rate is over. The new enterprise rate is double, and we'll need to revalidate your entire security posture." They were hemorrhaging money and capability, and they didn't even know it. My phone was silent. I had told Lena to stow, observe. I knew she was. I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach ache, that she was sitting in that open-plan office, watching this train wreck in slow motion. She knew my work. She knew what they were doing was wrong. I could feel her frustration radiating across the city. I pictured her opening a direct message to me, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Bella, this is a nightmare. Mara is lying to everyone. They're trying to hard-code the demo. Byron Hale found the stubs, and everyone is pretending they don't see it. It doesn't feel right. It feels dirty." And then I pictured her stopping, her cursor blinking. She'd look around. The walls were glass. Everyone was watching. She'd remember my words. Observe. She'd sigh, the fight going out of her, and she'd save the message to her drafts. My inbox remained empty. She was learning. The true comedy, however, was public. The PR machine, blissfully unaware of the engine fire, was churning out swag. I saw a junior marketer post a photo on Instagram. Boxes and boxes of Project Orbital lanyards, navy blue, with that slick logo. They'd even printed moleskin notebooks and reusable water bottles. Someone in the comments asked, "Is there a link to the project page?" The marketer replied with a smiley face and a bit.ly link. I clicked it. It went to a 404. They had ordered $10,000 in swag for a product that didn't exist. Linked to a URL that was broken. The swag had arrived. The shippable code had not. This wasn't just a metaphor. It was a diagnosis. This was a company terminally ill with its own marketing. The clock was ticking. The Midwest Tech Frontier Summit was in 3 weeks. This was the deadline. This was Mara's big debut as the new VP of Strategy. Investors were booking their briefings. Tech journalists were confirming their press passes. I could see her, practicing her panel zingers in that glass-walled conference room, rehearsing spontaneous insights about the future of logistics. She wasn't just selling a product, she was selling herself, and that meant she was all in. She had no choice but to double down, to push the lie all the way to the stage. Back in the engineering trenches, the lie was unraveling. Byron Hale, my imaginary, persistent junior dev, would be pulling his hair out. He'd be looking at the Git history again. He'd see the stub, to do. Add core logic post-origin review. He'd check the date on that comment. It was from 6 months ago. Then he'd check the date of Mara's origin review policy. That was from Monday. Who wrote after origin review? 6 months before the review was even announced, he'd trace the commit. He'd see the author B. Phillips. He'd realize it wasn't a to-do. It was a trap. It was a lock. It was a sign on a door that said, "You do not have the key." The whisper would start. Wasn't this Bella's old sandbox? Did she know this was coming? Wait. If this was her sandbox, where is the real code? Did Mara just fire the only person who knew how this works? No one would type it in a public Slack channel. No one wanted their name logged in the inevitable lawsuit. But the whisper was there. It was in the long pauses during the stand-up meetings. It was in the sudden, silent lunches. It was the smell of fear and ozone in the air. They were in the house I built. and they were just starting to realize I was the only one who knew where the load-bearing walls were, and I had just walked out the front door with the blueprints. The waiting was the hardest part. The silence. For 5 weeks, I had been a civilian. I set up my new consultancy. I took on 2 small, clean clients. I paid Phil Danner's invoice and sent Nora Vale her retainer. I watched, from the quiet distance of my home office, as Novantrix's marketing machine kicked into high gear for Project Orbital. They were all in. The Midwest Tech Frontier Summit was just over a week away. My patience, my strategic silence, had given them just enough rope. And on Monday morning, I watched Nora light the fuse. I was making tea. My personal email pinged. It wasn't an alert. It was a single, automated, sent receipt from Nora's secure server. Time 7:42 a.m. I knew what it was. The package had been delivered, right now, at the Novantrix Tower. General Counsel Karen Ellison was probably taking her first sip of coffee and opening the email that would incinerate her morning. I wasn't in the room, but I had helped draft the document. I knew every word. Cease desist unauthorized use of intellectual property. Notice of patent interference case ID. NV 54892J. It was a beautiful, terrible, surgically precise document. It wasn't a vague threat. It was a set of instructions for their surrender, complete with exhibits. Exhibit A, a side-by-side map. On the left, the public-facing function calls for Project Orbital, as published in their own developer documentation. On the right, the core decision trees of my filed, provisional patent for Spectre root. It wasn't just similar, it was a one-to-one match. Exhibit B, the Git history, a comparison of the SHA-256 hashes from their new orbital branch against my 11-month-old commits. It showed, irrefutably, that their entire moonshot was built on the hollow stubs I had left in the sandbox. Exhibit C. The header comments, my name, my personal copyright notice, and the real poison, the to-do. Add core logic post-origin review comments, all dated months before Mara Kincaid's origin review policy was even a whisper. It was the smoking gun in digital form, proving they knew the logic was missing and that it was tied to an origin they didn't own. I took a sip of my tea. It was perfectly steeped. I gave it an hour. I could picture the scene. Karen Ellison, a smart, no-nonsense lawyer, would have immediately forwarded it to Mara and the chief technology officer. I could hear Mara's laugh. It was the same bright, brittle sound from the all-hands call. A provisional, she'd say, waving her hand dismissively. That means nothing. It's not a real patent. Legal. Just make this go away. We have a summit to prepare for. It's the classic, arrogant mistake of the executive. She was wrong. A provisional patent means everything. It's not a flimsy, maybe. It's a land claim. It's a stake driven into the ground. It's a legally recognized timestamp from the United States Patent and Trademark Office that says, as of this date, this idea is mine. And my date was 5 weeks ago. Their product launch was next week. Mara thought it was a legal nuisance. Karen Ellison knew it was a declaration of war. But Nora wasn't done. The 1-2 punch, at 9:18 a.m., as the panic was just starting to crest in their legal department. Karen Ellison's inbox would have pinged again. This one wasn't from Nora. This one was from the USPTO. It was a simple, automated confirmation letter. It would confirm, in dry bureaucratic language, that the 3 provisional patents Spectre root, Flux Balancer, and Quiet Quorum had been successfully logged, processed, and time-stamped 5 weeks prior, and Nora, bless her black, efficient heart, had made sure the email included an attachment, a helpful PDF copy of the Title 35 interference statutes, the federal laws governing exactly this kind of dispute. This second email changed the entire conversation. Mara's nuisance just became a federal case. The tone of the internal emails, which I could read in my mind as clearly as if they were on my screen, would have flipped from airy and dismissive to metallic and cold. The CTO, a man named Raj, would be the first to break. "What do you mean, we can't use our own code?" he'd type, hitting reply all in his panic. "I have 3 teams working on Orbital. We've sunk $1 million into this." The CC list would explode. The COO, the CEO, the entire RD leadership. The smile then squeeze was over. This was the scream and scramble. I knew their private Slack channels. The real conversations would be happening there. In the Orbital war room. Someone would have posted the dumpster fire gif. Byron Hale, the junior dev, would be typing. "I told you the stubs were empty. I told you those headers were a problem." Then, the inevitable, desperate suggestion from a mid-level manager. "Can't we just rename the functions, refactor the code, change the variable names?" And Karen Ellison, the lawyer, her patience snapping, would type back the 5 words that every engineer dreads hearing from legal. "That's not how law works. You can't steal a Picasso, change the signature, and call it your own." The underlying logic, the unique method of solving the problem, was what I had patented. Renaming the functions was just painting a mustache on the Mona Lisa. This was when the COO, Garrett, would step in. Garrett wasn't a tech guy, he was a logistics man. He saw the company as a machine, and a critical part had just failed. He would have given one. Simple order. "I want a full chain of custody audit. Now, I want to know every line of code in Orbital, where it came from, and who wrote it. Shut down all commits until it's done." That audit, of course, would lead them right back to the poison pill my name, my stubs, my dates. The fallout was immediate. Nora had a source, an internal paralegal who was unhappy. Just before lunch, Nora got a tip. 2 senior contractors on the Orbital team, both specialists in data integration, had abruptly resigned. They didn't cite personal reasons. Their exit forms, which went straight to HR and legal, listed the reason for departure as unacceptable IP exposure. The rats were leaving the ship. They were smart. They knew that when the lawsuit started flying, the commit logs would be subpoenaed. They knew, "I was just following orders," didn't work when you were actively building on code you knew was stolen. They didn't want to be deposed. Their resignations weren't just a loss of manpower. They were a vote of no confidence, a legal document in themselves. By mid-afternoon, the first leak hit the internet. It wasn't Reuters. It was a niche tech forum, a message board for high-level engineers, a burner account. NTX's throwaway. Posted a single thread. Title: Noventrix Project, Orbital, Dead on Arrival, Post, Hearing Whispers from the Inside. Their flagship logistics demo for the summit is built on disputed IP from a senior architect they just forced out. Hearing the CD that landed today is an extinction-level event. Anyone else got info? The rumor bloomed, anonymous and toxic. It didn't have names, but it had specifics. Forced out. Disputed IP. Summit. It was enough. The smell of blood was in the water. This was Mara's moment of truth. She was standing at a crossroads. To her left was the path of reason: kill the project, pull out of the summit, settle with me quietly, and save the company. To her right was the path of ego: deny, double down, and risk everything. She was Mara Kincaid. She didn't know how to turn left. I knew this because Nora's source leaked the internal memo Mara sent to the entire RD division at 4 p.m. Subject: focus, innovation, summit, team. You may hear noise from external parties. This is a predictable distraction from a disgruntled former employee. It is a legal nuisance, and our counsel is handling it. Our mission has not changed. Our technology is proprietary and groundbreaking. We are Noventrix. We do not blink. All teams are to remain focused on the summit deliverables. We ship at the summit, period. It was magnificent, a masterpiece of corporate hubris. She had just put it in writing. She had admitted she received the CD. Noise from external parties, and had ordered her teams to continue working on the infringing code. Nora received the leaked memo at 4:15. At 4:16, my phone rang. "She's an idiot," Nora said. "No hello." "She's not just an idiot. She's a gift. She just handed us willful infringement on a silver platter. I saw it, I said. So, letter number 2. Letter number 2 is already on its way to Karen Ellison's inbox. Nora said, "This one is less polite. The second letter was different. It wasn't a cease desist. It was a final notice before TRO and damages." It informed Noventrix that because their VP of Strategy had acknowledged the IP dispute and had ordered work to continue, any public demonstration namely, the summit would constitute willful infringement. Willful is the magic word. It's the word that unlocks treble damages. It's the difference between accidentally bumping into someone and punching them in the face. The court, Nora explained, could now award me 3 times the calculated damages, 3 times the lost profits, 3 times the licensing fees, 3 times the humiliation. The letter explicitly warned them that a public demo would trigger an immediate filing for a temporary restraining order and an injunction that could freeze their entire logistics division. At the bottom of the letter, Nora had added a personal touch. She had quoted Mara's all-hands comment back to her, your VP's assertion that if it's adjacent to Noventrix's roadmap, it's ours. We disagree, and we have the receipts. Nora had told me she underlined the word willful at least 3 times. I hung up. The sun was getting low, the machine was in motion, the trap was set, the bait was taken, and the mechanism was grinding itself shut. Mara Kincaid was still marching toward the stage at the summit, practicing her zingers, completely unaware that she wasn't walking to a podium. She was walking to an execution. I opened my web browser. I went to the Midwest Tech Frontier Summit website. I found the schedule for the keynote presentations. I found the link for the official live stream. I bookmarked it. I closed the laptop. My work, for now, was done. I had built the system. I had documented the evidence. I had laid the legal mines. All I had to do now was wait. Patience isn't passive, it's pressure. I didn't watch it live. I refused to give them the satisfaction of my real-time attendance or the anxiety that would come with it. Summit day was a Tuesday. I spent the morning at the gym, pushing myself until my muscles burned. I came home, took a long shower, made a light lunch, and filed the invoices for my new clients. I was a business owner now. I had work to do. At 2 o'clock, I decided it was time. I poured myself a tall glass of water, sat down at my workstation, and pulled up the website for the Midwest Tech Frontier Summit. The keynote video was already on the front page. Watch the replay. I clicked the link. The player loaded. Mara's smiling. Professionally photographed face was the thumbnail. I clicked the small settings cog in the corner of the player and set the playback speed to 1.25. I didn't have time for the filler. I wasn't here for the performance. I was here for the data. I hit play. The upbeat, royalty-free synth music started, sounding even more frantic and tinny at the faster speed. The moderator's voice was a high-pitched squeak, welcoming everyone to the main event. And then, there she was. The camera panned across the stage. Booth number 214. The vinyl banners were huge, screaming Project Orbital in that soulless corporate font. The stage lights were so bright they bleached everything out. I could almost smell it through the screen, that unique, over-caffeinated convention center air, a mix of industrial carpet, stale coffee, and a rented scent diffuser pumping out a smell that was supposed to be uplifting citrus, but just smelled like fear. The camera zoomed in on Mara. She was standing center stage, wearing a blazer the color of overconfidence, a bright, toxic, electric blue. She was beaming at the crowd, her hands clasped, even sped up. I could see her rehearsing her killer line under her breath. Orbital changes everything. The moderator introduced her. The applause was polite. Then the camera panned to the demo station. And my breath caught. There he was, Byron Hale. He looked terrible. He looked like he hadn't slept in a month. His eyes, even on the fuzzy stream, were threaded with red. He was hovering over a shaky-looking demo rig, a single laptop wired into an 80-inch screen with another engineer I didn't recognize. The new guy. They weren't presenters. They were a bomb squad, staring at a device they knew was unstable. Mara began her pitch. It was fast, breathless, full of soaring rhetoric about the future of logistics and self-healing networks. She was selling my white paper, and she was selling it with the conviction of a true believer. The camera panned to the investors in the front row. They were nodding. They were eating it up. "But don't take my word for it," she said, her voice bright and brittle. "Let's show you Orbital in action." She turned and gestured to the big screen. Byron, his hand visibly shaking, clicked the mouse. The applause was expectant. The map animated. It was the glowing blue render from the PR deck. It was beautiful. Metrics flickered to life on the sidebar. Fleet efficiency, 98%. Routes optimized, 4,000. Live network status, green. It was a perfect, seamless 20 seconds of glory. 20 seconds of a complete, hard-coded, shameless lie. They were faking it, and it was working. For that one moment, Mara Kincaid was the queen of the summit. "Impressive," she said, her smile wide enough to crack. "But what happens?" she asked the crowd. "When the network is stressed, let's simulate a cascading failure. Let's take 10% of the fleet offline in the Midwest." I leaned forward. I hit the spacebar, pausing the video. "Oh, you fools," I whispered to the frozen image of her smiling face. You actually tried to run the code." They'd been so confident in their fake, hard-coded happy path that they'd wired the failure button to the actual system. The hollow, broken, booby-trapped system. I hit the spacebar. On screen, Byron clicked the mouse. The map froze. The glowing trucks vanished. The 98% efficiency metric was gone. And then, the entire 80-inch screen, the centerpiece of their $600 million roadmap, went black. A single, white, monospaced line of text appeared. Unhandled exception. The room was dead silent. I could feel it. Even through the recording, more text appeared. My heart was hammering. It was beautiful. System. Null router efference. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. At Novantrix, orbital, flux balancer. Initiate, fallback context. They had called it. They had actually called the flux balancer stub, the hollowed-out, empty function I had left for them, the function that did nothing, the function that returned null. The system, expecting a complex, calculated graph of new routes, had received nothing, and it had broken. It had shattered, in front of everyone. I paused the video again. I just looked at it. Flux balancer, initiate fallback, my trap. Hey, my time bomb. It was a masterpiece. I pressed play. The camera feed was pure chaos. It stayed on the error message for 3, 4, 5 agonizing seconds. Then it shaky panned back to Mara. Her smile was gone. It was a frozen, grotesque mask of pure terror. Her eyes were wide. The hot mic, however, was the real star. The audio feed picked up Byron's voice, high and squeaky at 1.25 speed, screaming into his headset. "It's the stub. It's the stub. It's calling itself. It's not returning a graph. It's collapsing the stack." He was diving for the keyboard, mashing the escape key. The error message vanished, replaced by the default Windows desktop background. The entire summit was now staring at a picture of a blue flower. But the audio was everything. The other engineer, the new guy, the contractor, ripped his headset off. He wasn't whispering. He said it so loud, so clearly, that the moderator's microphone picked it up 3 feet away. I told them it wouldn't work. I told them we couldn't use the original logic. It had an IP conflict. I hit the spacebar, pause. I dragged the playhead back. 5 seconds. I hit play. We couldn't use the original logic IP conflict. I hit pause. I rewound. I played it again. IP conflict. He said it. He confessed. In front of a room full of journalists, investors, and competitors. He announced the reason for the failure. He told them it was a crime scene. I let the rest of the video play. I watched the camera pan out. I saw the man in row 3, a journalist I recognized from a tech journal, his head snap up. He looked at the person next to him, his eyes wide. I saw the woman in row 4, her head down, her thumbs flying across her phone. She was tweeting. It was over. Mara stepped forward. She tried to force the smile back onto her face. It was a wound. "Ah," she said, her voice a strained, high-pitched squeal. The joys of live technology. She tried to laugh. It sounded like a tire blowing out. "Just a minor technical difficulty." The room clapped. It was the most horrifying sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of pity. It was the awkward, polite, shuffling applause you give to a child who has just fallen flat on their face in the school play. It was the sound of courage, not competence. It was the clap of death. The live stream feed cut. Abruptly, the video ended, cutting back to the "watch the replay" thumbnail. I closed the browser tab. The silence of my office was absolute. The sun was streaming through the window. I sat there for a full minute. I didn't need to be backstage to see what was happening. I could picture it perfectly. Someone had ripped the HDMI cable out of the wall, probably breaking the port. The vinyl banners were already drooping. Byron Hale had his head in his hands, finally allowing himself to breathe, realizing he had just participated in a career-ending disaster. And somewhere, in a locked bathroom stall, that intern Celeste, the one who loved the lanyards, was crying. She wasn't crying because the demo failed. She was crying because she had just watched a multi-million-dollar project and a senior executive's entire career detonate in real time. She was crying because she just realized what IP conflict meant. She was crying because she was an accomplice. I looked down at my desk. My cup of tea, the one I'd made before sitting down, was still there. I had forgotten about it. I picked it up. It was cold now. I'd let it oversteep. I took a sip. It was dark, bitter, and absolutely perfect. The public implosion was catastrophic and total. The tweets from row 4 had gone viral within an hour. IP conflict became the trending hashtag in the tech world. Novantrix's stock, which had been climbing in anticipation of the summit, halted trading and then reopened in a freefall. The company went dark. No press releases. No more LinkedIn bravado. Just a vacuum. I let them sit in that vacuum for 24 hours. I let the board members see the stock tickers. I let the investors' panicked calls go to Karen Ellison's voicemail. I let Mara Kincaid sit in her glass office, which I imagined now felt like a glass cage, and understand what willful infringement was going to cost them. Then I called Nora. "It's time," I said. "I've been waiting by the door," she replied. I didn't go. I wasn't an employee. I wasn't a disgruntled former employee. I was a plaintiff. My presence wasn't required. My absence was the point. The call came from Nora 3 hours later. I was in my lab, whiteboarding the architecture for Quiet Quorum 2.0. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. "Tell me," I said. Nora's voice was low, controlled, and humming with a kind of clean, cold energy. It was theater, Bella, pure, uncut legal theater, and the set design perfect. "The room?" I asked. "Fluorescent beige," she said, and I could hear her smile. "One of those awful, windowless debrief rooms on the 32nd floor. The kind of room that pretends to be modern but just smells like stale air and quiet panic. And Bella." The coffee was conspicuously absent. They don't serve refreshments at an execution. She set the stage for me. She said Garrett, the COO, was at the head of the table, his face gray. He'd opened the meeting with the weakest phrase possible. "We're here," he'd said, "to discuss the unexpected friction from yesterday's demonstration." Friction. I loved that. Like we were a misaligned cog, not a nuclear bomb. "The board?" I asked. "Oh, they flew in," she said. "A pair of them. The ones who really matter. One guy with tortoiseshell frames who looked like he'd just eaten a bowl of acid, and a woman who represented the biggest pension fund. They weren't just observing, Bella. They were running the room. And in the center of the table, Nora said, sat Mara Kincaid. She was just staring, Nora recounted. Staring at the wood grain. Her blazer was wrinkled, and that voice, That bright, terrible, over-caffeinated voice, it was gone. She was missing her primary weapon. She was, for the first time, silent. This was the scene Nora had been instructed to walk into. I gave them 5 minutes, Nora told me. Just long enough for Garrett to finish his friction comment. Then I opened the door. I didn't knock. I pictured it. The heavy door swinging open, the head snapping up, the collective intake of breath. Nora, in her sharpest, darkest suit, walking in as if she owned the building. She didn't ask to sit, I said, guessing. I did not, Nora confirmed. I walked to the head of the table, right next to Garrett, and I dropped the exhibit packet. It made a beautiful sound. Bella, a heavy, satisfying thud. What did you say? I said, Nora purred. Ms. Phillips sends her regards. The silence that followed, she told me, was absolute. The board members stared at her. Garrett looked like he was going to be sick. Mara, she said, flinched, like the thud had been a physical blow. But the real show, Nora explained, was that she didn't have to present a thing. Karen Ellison, the company's own general counsel, did it for her. The chain of custody audit Garrett had ordered had been completed, and Karen, as the company's lawyer, had a non-negotiable duty to present its findings to the board. Karen looked at me, Nora said, with the most profoundly tired eyes I have ever seen. It wasn't hostility, Bella, it was recognition. Then she turned to the board, took a deep breath, and dimmable the lights. She didn't play the summit replay. She didn't play the news clips. She played the Jan 17 origin reel. Bella, Nora said, her voice dropping. It was the most devastating 5 minutes of television I've ever witnessed. There you were, on their 60-inch screen. Your lab, the server rack, the whiteboard. She said the room was dead silent as they watched 11 months of my life, compressed. They watched the first napkin sketch get pinned to the wall. They watched the code compile, night after night, and always, in the corner, that digital clock with the AM radio station scrolling by. They heard a weather report from January 17th, Nora said. They saw the visible wall calendar in the shot flip from February to March. They watched you build the entire thing. When the video ended, Karen didn't pause. She turned the lights back up and motioned to the exhibit packet I'd had notarized by Phil Danner, the packet Nora had just brought. Karen already had her own copy from the audit. Karen, Nora said, was methodical. She had to be. She was showing them the full extent of the liability. She was saving the company, and in the process, she was dissecting Mara Kincaid, piece by piece. Nora described how Karen laid out the exhibits, one by one. Exhibit A, the device IDs, all purchased by Bella Phillips, all on her personal credit cards. Exhibit B, the notarized development logs, cross-referenced with the postmarked envelopes from the PSO box. Exhibit C, the affidavit from Cheryl Klein, the diner manager. I swear to God, Bella, the board member with the tortoise-shell frames, held up the photocopy of that coffee-stained napkin. He just stared at it. Exhibit D, the monthly witness forms from Dr. Miles Ortega, the red ink, the academic critiques, the signatures, proving independent, third-party validation. Nora paused. They weren't looking at a lawsuit, Bella. They were looking at a receipt. They were staring at the documented, itemized, notarized proof of the thing they had tried to steal. And then, Karen Ellison went for the kill. Karen pulled out a small audio recorder. Nora told me. She said, and finally, the point of conveyance. From the all-hands call, 5 weeks ago, when this policy was announced, Nora said the room was so quiet. The air conditioning kicking on sounded like a jet engine. First, they heard my voice, clear as a bell in the beige room, even with no company time or equipment. And then, they heard Mara, bright, loud, confident, fatal. If you don't like the policy, you can resign. Nora described the moment. Mara actually closed her eyes, she said. Then the audio played the last part. Once it's in the system, it's ours. Nora let the words hang in my ear, just as they must have hung in that room. Bella, she said. The word ours. It just hung there. It hung in the air like a blade. No one coughed. No one shuffled their papers. The air turned to concrete. That single word was the sound of her entire career ending. It was the sound of willful infringement. This was when Nora finally spoke. She let the silence sit. Then she stepped forward. Pre-existing, off-contract intellectual property, she said, her voice cutting through the hush. Developed with independent resources, validated by independent witnesses, and backed by a documented, notarized continuity chain that predates Ms. Kincaid's employment. She looked directly at the board members. Your claim, she said, is 0. Then, she told me. She reached into her own briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it down the glossy table. It stopped directly in front of Garrett. It was the acknowledgement and retraction, I said. The one-page confession. Nora agreed. The public retraction of all claims to Project Orbital, the full binding acknowledgement of your sole authorship and ownership, the permanent injunction against them ever using, copying, or referencing your work again. And, Nora added, the non-disparagement clause is, of course, one way. You are free to tell your story. They are not. She described the sheet of paper sitting there. The signature line, she said, was just glowing. It looked like a trapdoor lever. Garrett didn't touch it. Karen didn't touch it. The board member with the tortoiseshell frames, the one who had been silent, finally moved. He didn't look at the paper. He didn't look at Nora. He looked at Mara Kincaid. He leaned forward, and Nora said his voice was so low, so cold, it made her skin crawl. Mara? He asked. Just one question. Did you, or anyone on your team, verify the origin of this code before you announced Project Orbital? Nora said she watched. She watched Mara K.R. remember. She watched the woman who had built a career on buzzwords and bright, sharp confidence completely fall apart. She opened her mouth. Bella, Nora said, her voice holding no triumph, only clinical observation. Nothing came out. She just sat there. Her hands were flat on the table. She was reaching for words, but none arrived. That, Nora concluded, was the end of the meeting. I told them I'd expect the signed retraction by morning. She hung up. I put my phone down. I turned back to my whiteboard. The word quiet quorum was written at the top. I picked up a blue marker. The plan had worked. Every step, every document, every single, painstaking piece. The reckoning was cold. It was precise. And it was complete. Nora's call came at 9:30 the next morning. She was all business. The retraction arrived at 8:55 a.m., she said. Her voice was flat, like a surgeon confirming a procedure was complete. Signed by Garrett and Karen Ellison. It's done. It's filed. And Mara? I asked, staring out my window. That, Nora said, is where the chess comes in. The board convened at 9 a.m. sharp. I was not, of course, invited. I didn't need to be. My part of the performance was over. This was the cleanup crew, and their job was to dismantle the stage and dispose of the body. Nora's source, the unhappy paralegal, had given her the play-by-play. Mara Kincaid was not in the boardroom. She was not invited to the debrief. She was, I learned, sitting in her glass-walled office on the 45th floor, watching her inbox, waiting for a summons that would never arrive. The violence was administrative. It was silent. It was happening on a server, in a database, pages away from her. At 9:15, Nora reported. While the board was discussing the revised P&L forecasts, the head of IT was in the room. He didn't say a word. He just tapped on his tablet. A single SQL query. A permissions flag flipped from 1 to 0. Her badge is inactive, Nora said. Her admin privileges, her signing authority, her access to the executive share drive all revoked. Mid-meeting. Mara wouldn't know it yet. She'd find out when she tried to go for lunch. and the elevator panel blinked red. She'd find out when she tried to log into her corporate Amex, and it said, "Account not found." They hadn't just fired her, they had deleted her. The motions in the boardroom were clipped. They were brutal. There was no debate. The time for discussion was over. This was the time for cauterization. Motion 1, Nora read from her notes. To terminate Project Orbital in its entirety, effective immediately. All repositories to be archived and locked. All marketing assets to be destroyed. Unanimous, Nora said. The minutes. My source tells me, read like a death certificate. Project status terminated. Reason catastrophic IP contamination. Motion 2, she continued, to formally accept the resignation of VP Mara Kincaid, effective immediately, for cause, citing gross mismanagement and exposure of the company to significant legal and financial liability. Unanimous. The Queen was off the board, the game was reset, but the pieces were still stained. By noon, the internal systems began to reflect the new reality. The compliance team, in a frantic, terrified scramble to cover themselves, began purging the poison. Tickets flooded the JIRA system. Urgent, all RD personnel must complete a mandatory IP hygiene refresher course. Critical. All code repositories must be scanned for non-compliant headers and external dependencies. The internal wiki page for Project Orbital. The one that had been filled with Mara's moonshot bravado and slick renders was gutted. I couldn't see it, but I could picture the diff file, a sea of red deletions, striking through every promise, every deadline, every buzzword. It was all replaced by a single, sterile, black line. Core IP and foundational logic for this initiative have been traced to Bella Phillips' former employee. All related work is permanently enjoined by legal counsel. Do not access, do not fork, do not reference. It wasn't an apology to me. It was a legal fence, built to keep their own engineers from straying back onto my property. It was an admission, written into their own permanent record. The public retraction came an hour later. It was a sterile, two-sentence note posted to their investor relations page, a masterpiece of saying nothing and everything at once. Noventrix is committed to ethical innovation and the protection of intellectual property. We are realigning our logistics strategy and will share updates in the coming quarter. Ethical innovation. The admission was in the adjective. You only start talking about how ethical you are after you've been caught doing the opposite. But the real story, the one that mattered, was already being written. The IP conflict tweet from row 4 had given the press the blood they needed. A freelance journalist, the one I recognized from the Tech Journal, published his piece that afternoon. The headline was devastating. Engineers' meticulous documentation collapses flagship demo inside Noventrix's patent misstep. It had everything. Nora's source had been very, very busy. The article mentioned the origin reel. It mentioned the notarized logs. It mentioned the affidavit from the diner manager the coffee-stained napkin made it into print. It contrasted my 11-month, independently witnessed build against Mara's "it's ours" directive from the all-hands call. It painted a portrait the quiet, meticulous engineer on one side, and the loud, greedy, careless executive on the other. It wasn't just a story about code. It was a story about justice. My personal laptop, which had been silent for weeks, began to chime, and chime, and chime. The recruiters, they weren't just recruiters. They were VPs of engineering, CTOs, and chief IP officers from every major logistics and tech firm in the country. My LinkedIn inbox, which I'd left dormant, was a smoking crater. The subject lines weren't the standard. I have an exciting opportunity. They were "saw the piece," and "let's talk about building a real IP strategy," and "Chief of Staff, IP Systems," and "we need your discipline." They weren't just trying to hire me as an engineer. They were trying to hire the protocol. They saw the documentation, the witnesses, the notarization as a product. They didn't just want me to build their tech. They wanted me to build their fortress. I closed the browser. The validation was nice, but it was just noise. Then, my personal phone buzzed. A single DM, Not from a recruiter. It was from Lena, the message she had saved in her drafts, the one she'd finally sent. Holy, you really did it. They're scrubbing Orbital from the servers. They just walked Mara out. Her badge didn't work. They walked her to the freight elevator. I've never seen anything like it. You burned them to the ground. I read the message. A small, cold part of me felt a flicker of satisfaction. She had stayed. She had observed, and she had learned. But I looked at her text, and I knew this wasn't the end. This was just the removal of the queen. The board was still full of pieces. I marked her message as unread. I wasn't done. I knew Noventrix. I knew Garrett, the COO. He couldn't go to the investors with nothing. He couldn't admit that their entire $600 million roadmap was gone. They would need a fallback, a pivot, a safe version. I had already anticipated this. I saw the press release before it was even written. They would call it Root Light. They would promise safety by subtraction. They would tell the world they were building a new system. From the ground up, one that was fully compliant and internally sourced. They would take the hollow shell I had built, the interfaces, the APIs, the stubs, and try to build their own, less effective logic inside it. They would think that by not using Spectre Root or Flux Balancer, they were safe. I smiled. I knew Karen Ellison, now terrified of her own shadow, would be running every compliance checker she owned. She'd be scanning every line of code in Root Light before it was ever committed, looking for my name, looking for my logic. But I hadn't just booby-trapped the logic. I had poisoned the interfaces. I could picture the scene. I could see Byron Hale, or what was left of his team, trying to build Root Light. They're in a clean room. They're scared. They're writing new code. But to make it work, to plug it into the rest of the Noventrix ecosystem, they have to use the API definitions I had written. There was no other way. And as Karen's automated licensing scanner runs, it starts to scream. Warning: unaudited dependency detected in header file core routing. Flag: non-standard comment block found in Flux interface, def. I could see a junior dev, his hands shaking, opening one of those core header files, an interface file. Just definitions, no logic. It should have been safe. He'd scroll past the standard Noventrix copyright block, and he'd find the little Easter egg I'd left for them. 11 months ago, a comment, buried deep. Phillips Protocol v1.0. This interface definition is a protected work product. Do not modify, redistribute, or compile in any derivative work without express written authorization. See Notarized Attestation, Dr. M. Ortega, John 17. Case ID NV 54892J. It wasn't just a comment. It was a legal notice. It was a claim. I had named the protocol itself. I had tied the very shape of the API to my notarized evidence packet. The panic would start all over again, but this time, it wouldn't be loud. Like Mara's bravado, it wouldn't be the sound of a demo collapsing. It would be the quiet, private, sickening sound of chairs sliding back. The sound of 3 engineers getting up from their desks, walking to Karen Ellison's office, and showing her the screen. The sound of Karen realizing that I hadn't just taken the engine. I had taken the blueprints for the entire car. They couldn't even build a go-kart without driving onto my property. This was the quieter panic, the private one, the one that sounded like, "We are trapped." The recruiters who had been flooding my inbox with "saw the piece" subject lines were offering me jobs, VPs of engineering, senior architects. I said no to all of them. Then I got an email from Anna Ishikawa, the CTO of Vervent Labs. Her email was different. It didn't mention my victory. It didn't mention Mara or the demo. It mentioned my documented methodology and my provable chain of custody. She wasn't offering me a job. She was offering me a department. So I stepped into Vervent Labs. The building itself was a statement. Noventrix had been a glass tower of mirrored, opaque windows, hiding the beige, fluorescent-lit panic rooms inside. Vervent Labs was a low-rise building made of clear, transparent glass. The air wasn't recycled and stale. It was infused with a faint, clean scent of lemon and ozone, And the servers, the heart of the company, weren't hidden in a concrete basement. They were encased in a glass-walled core in the center of the atrium, humming with a low, steady thrum. It was the sound of trust. My title plate, the one they mounted by my new office, didn't say lead architect. It said Chief IP Systems Officer. Anna had been direct. "I didn't hire you as a trophy, Bella," she'd said on our first call. "I don't want to just buy your patents. I want you to weave your discipline into our culture. I want you to protect all our engineers the way you protected yourself. I want you to build a fortress here, but one with the doors wide open." They hadn't just hired me. They'd hired my protocol. My first week wasn't spent coding. It was spent in a conference room with Vervant's legal and HR teams. I wasn't just building a system. I was performing surgery on the company's DNA. I called it the red flag pipeline. From today, I announced, projecting a simple flow chart onto the wall. No new project gets a repository until it passes an origin diff. The general counsel, a man named Mark, looked skeptical. An origin diff? Where did the idea come from? I said, pointing to the first box. I want the notebook. I want the email. I want the Starlight Diner napkin. We document, timestamp, and witness the concept before the first line of code is ever written. We establish a non-company origin if one exists, or a clean company-sponsored origin if it's an internal group brainstorm. Next box, witness of record templates. We are digitizing the Miles Ortega protocol, I said. Every project, no matter how small, is assigned a technical witness from an adjacent department. They do a 30-minute review and sign off once a month. It's not a critique, it's a witnessing. We are building a continuous third-party verified chain of custody for all RD. The last box, audit-ready commit hygiene. No more MISC fixes or updated code, I said. Every single commit message will be a full, declarative sentence, justifying its existence in plain English. We are no longer writing code. We are building a body of evidence. The head of HR looked nervous. This sounds like it will slow us down. Engineers will feel protected. I cut him off. They will feel protected, and a protected engineer is a fast engineer. They will build without looking over their shoulder. This isn't bureaucracy. This is armor. My first test came that afternoon. HR sent over the standard Vervant employment agreement and NDA for me to sign. It was 90% fine. But I found 3 clauses, 3 small, gray ambiguous sentences about related works, in-scope contributions, and work performed using knowledge gained during employment. They were the same landmines I'd seen in the Novantrix contract, the ones Mara Kincaid had thought would be her hooks. I redlined all 3 of them. I sent the document back to Mark, the general counsel. My note was simple. Mark, these 3 clauses are future you liabilities. They are legally ambiguous and prioritize a hypothetical, future claim over provable, present-day authorship. They create risk for both the company and the engineer. My protocol is about clarity, not ambiguity. I suggest we remove them. I hit send. I expected a phone call. I expected a debate. I expected him to tell me, the new person, that this was just standard boilerplate. An hour later, my inbox pinged. The reply from Mark was 1 sentence. Thank you. This is clearer and stronger. I'm adopting this red line for all future employment agreements, company-wide. I just sat there. It wasn't a fight. It was a collaboration. They had actually listened. In my first week, I had changed the legal DNA of the company. The engineers, of course, were wary. They saw me as the IP police, the suit who had come to make their lives harder. The rumor was that I was a killer. Then, Rena from the data science team came to my office. She was young, brilliant, and visibly nervous. She had a skunkworks project, a new, ridiculously fast data compression algorithm. This is amazing. Rena, I said, looking at her demo. Where's your origin, Doc? She blinked. My what? Your origin, I said, leaning back. When did you have the idea? I don't know. she stammered. "A few months ago at that hackathon in Austin." "On your personal time?" "Yes." "On your personal laptop?" "Yes." "Did you check it into any Vervent repos?" "No." "God. No," she said, then froze, worried she'd said the wrong thing. I smiled. "Good. Here's what we're going to do. You are going to go home, find your notebooks, your commits, your plane ticket to Austin. You're going to build your origin file. Then, Vervent's legal team is going to file your provisional patent, in your name, with you as the sole inventor." She just stared at me. "But it's for the company. I want us to use it." "I know," I said. "And after the patent is filed, Vervent will execute a sole inventor's licensing agreement with you for a significant 5-figure bonus. We are recognizing this is yours. We are paying you for it. We are protecting you, and we are protecting the company. We don't steal here. Rena, we acquire. Cleanly." I greenlit her project for internal development. The word spread through the engineering Slack channels faster than any memo. "She's not a cop," one of them wrote. "She's a goddamn shield." The team saw it. Protection and speed were not enemies. They were the same thing. My life found a new rhythm. I was in at 7. I drank my coffee black. No sugar. The team on floor 11, the data science floor, started calling it CIPSO fuel. I heard one of them say it as I walked by. "Hold the meeting. The CIPSO hasn't had her black coffee yet." I stopped. I turned around. They all froze. I laughed. It was just once. A short, sharp, genuine laugh. "It's true," I said. "Don't." The fear broke. The tension vanished. I wasn't just a protocol. I was Bella. The past, however, never fully disappears. It just becomes data. A recruiter, one of the ones I'd turned down, forwarded me an email. It was a leaked screenshot from an internal, locked Noventrix Slack channel. It was from 2 days ago, an engineer I didn't recognize, raging. "This is impossible. Legal is blocking the root light interfaces. They're saying the headers are contaminated. We can't build anything. We built this entire company on her work, and now we're trapped. This is a joke. We built this on her work." The quiet, internal admission, the confession they'd never make in public. I stared at the screenshot. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt the truth of it. I closed the notification. It wasn't drama. It was just a data point, confirming my strategy had worked that Friday. I took the afternoon off. I drove to the nondescript brick building, to StrataWorks co-working. Phil Danner was in his windowless office, the air still smelling of archival paper and strong tea. He looked up, his eyes as sharp as ever. "Ms. Phillips," he nodded. I didn't say anything. I just placed a long, thin, heavy box on his desk. He opened it. Inside, nestled in black velvet, was a matte black, perfectly balanced fountain pen, a Mont Blanc. "This," I said, "is for the next poor genius who wanders in here." He picked it up. He tested the weight of it in his hand. A slow, rare smile touched his lips. "This," he said, "is a very good pen." My new job was strategy. My new job was meetings. My new job was building systems for people. But my nights were still for me. My new home lab was cleaner, better funded. I pulled up the architecture for quiet quorum. My beautiful shadow consensus logic. It was brilliant, but it was also, now, public. It was detailed in my patent filings. It was exposed. Mara Kincaid and Noventrix were just one kind of predator, the loud, stupid kind. The smart ones were out there, the ones who read patent filings for a living, the ones who learned, predators evolve. My systems had to, as well. I checked out a new branch, Quiet Quorum V2. I began to sharpen it. I kept the same silhouette, the same public-facing API, but I gutted the organs. I replaced the consensus algorithm with a different mathematical principle, one I had not published, one that was faster, quieter, and an order of magnitude more paranoid. I was still building. I was still that woman in the basement lab. I was at my new desk at Vermont. The clear glass walls were catching the late afternoon sun. I opened my calendar. I set a new tickler. Summit plus 30, a reminder. 30 days after the Noventrix demo catastrophe. Why? Because the war was over, but the legal treaties were still being finalized. Statute windows matter. Filing deadlines for converting my provisional patents matter. The work wasn't done just because I'd won. It was only done when the last I was dotted. I grabbed a yellow sticky note. I wrote down the 9 words that had become my entire philosophy. Patience isn't passive, it's pressure in escrow. I stuck it to the bezel of my new monitor. A reminder, the work is never, ever done. My Summit plus 30 calendar reminder dinged. The 30 days were up. Noventrix had been silent for a month. Licking its wounds, the stock had stabilized. But it was a wounded animal. Garrett, the COO, needed to show the investors something. He couldn't go back to them with empty hands. And there it was, a press release. They were rolling cameras for a press reset. They announced an investor-only webinar, scheduled for the next day, to unveil their new path forward, the product Root Light. The press release was a masterpiece of legal weasel words, internally sourced, a ground-up design, fully compliant. It included a short, confident quote from Karen Ellison, the general counsel, assuring all stakeholders that Root Light is clean. I read the press release in my new, bright office at Vermont, the one with the clear glass walls. Clean, I whispered to myself. I forwarded the link to Nora. Her reply was instant. They're lying, and they're stupid. I didn't know how stupid until Nora called me that evening. Her voice wasn't calm. It was a low, excited thrum. Bella, she said. My source came through. The real source. The one who's terrified of Karen. The one who's seen the Root Light Jira tickets. And I asked, though I already knew, and they're trapped, she said, a sharp laugh in her voice. The Phillips Protocol header comments were a total success. They can't build their own system without referencing your interfaces. Their clean logic is slow. It's buggy. It'll never pass a demo. So they're not demoing, I said, anticipating the move. Oh, they're demoing, Nora corrected me. And to make it work, they cheated. They built legacy adapters. And the adapters, Bella, the adapters are routing all the complex calculations guess where. Straight to my signed routines, I said. Straight to your protected IP. My source just leaked the CI logs. The continuous integration logs for Root Light. From last night, the logs are full of hash collisions. They're making unauthorized, authenticated calls to your protected routines. They knew the headers were contaminated, and they did it anyway. I leaned back. The chain of custody was complete. So, Root Light isn't clean. It's just a renamed, laundered version of Orbital. Exactly, Nora said. And they're arrogant enough to demo it tomorrow. I'm filing for the temporary restraining order. Right now. The night before, I said. Surgical. I'm attaching the CI logs as Exhibit J, Nora said. This isn't a threat of a TRO. Bella, this is the execution. The judge will see it. A federal judge does not like being lied to. And a press release saying fully compliant, next to a CI log full of hash collisions, is a very specific, very arrogant lie. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m. I was already at my desk at Vervant, a dark coffee in my hand. It was Nora. Emergency hearing scheduled, 8:30 a.m. This morning, the judge is displeased. I wasn't going. My new job was here. I had a meeting at 9 to review Rena's patent application. I sat in my glass office, watching the city wake up, my phone on the desk in front of me, face up, set to vibrate. At 8:43 a.m., it buzzed. A text from Nora. Noventrix is here. They sent outside counsel. The expensive ones. Garrett is here. The tortoiseshell board member is here. Karen Ellison is here. They all look like they slept in their suits. I texted back. No Mara. I waited. My meeting at 9 was with humans. This was a meeting with ghosts. Ping. A new text. Wait. She just arrived. Late. Ping. She's not in a blazer. She looks small. She's wearing a wrinkled blouse. Her badge didn't work at the security gate. She's on the public attendee list. Counsel is ignoring her. She's sitting in the back row. Alone. I stared at that. Badgeless. She wasn't an executive. She wasn't an employee. She was a civilian. The board must have subpoenaed her, forced her to come and watch her own funeral. The hearing began. My phone was silent for 20 minutes. I stared at my own monitor, at the architecture for Quiet Quorum 2.0. I was building the future. They were still trapped in the past I had built for them. Ping, Nora. Judge is reviewing the CI logs. He is not happy. He just asked Noventrix counsel to explain the hash collisions. Ping. Their lawyer is trying to argue fair use and legacy interoperability. It's weak. He sounds like he's apologizing. Ping. Now I'm up. I'm not just showing the logs. I'm showing the intent. Ping. Exhibit K. I knew Exhibit K. It was the crown jewel. Leaked just this morning. The smoking gun email chain from the Root Light team, a senior project manager, frantic about the demo deadline, had written to Karen Ellison, senior PM. The new logic is too slow. It'll fail the demo, but the legacy adapters work. Can't we just rename the nodes and the function calls? It'll look like a new system. We'll be fine. And Karen Ellison's reply. The reply that sealed their fate. Karen Ellison, GC. I am advising against this, but I understand the business constraints. Renaming is not inventing, but if you can obscure the call chain, proceed, but the risk is high. Karen had known. She had known and let them do it. She had gone from, that's not how law works, to, let's see if we can get away with it. Ping, Nora, now, Exhibit L, the hash collision matrix. Our expert witness mapped it. It proves, without a shadow of a doubt, that every time Root Light performs a complex calculation, it's making a call through a legacy adapter, which routes directly to the routines protected by my Phillips protocol header. The routines signed by my HSM dongles. Ping. It's undeniable. Their clean system is a parasitic twin, living off my stolen work. The judge sees it. The room must have gone silent. I waited. 1 minute, 2, 5. My leg was bouncing. Patience. Pressure. Ping. Nora. He's reading his ruling. From the bench. Ping. He's reading the email from Karen. He's reading the PM's rename the nodes comment. Ping. He just said the word. Willful. I let out a breath I'd been holding for a year. Ping. He said it again. This court finds that the infringement was not only willful, but, ping, deceptive. Ping. Turo is granted. Effective immediately. Noventrix is enjoined from demonstrating, selling, or distributing Root Light. I stood up. I walked to the window. My phone kept buzzing. It was Nora again. Ping. It's a media circus outside. The reporters from the summit. They caught the Noventrix team walking out. Garrett looks like he's seen a ghost. Ping. The only quote they got? Demonstration enjoined. All damages reserved. It was over. The product was dead. The fallback was dead. The $600 million roadmap was a smoking hole in the ground. But Nora wasn't done. Ping. We're back in the council room. Just us. Their lawyers, the board member, and Mara. Garrett's team is here. Ping. Their outside counsel just turned to Mara. He's furious. He said, your comment from the all hands about how once it's in the system, it's ours. That was Exhibit C. That was the start of the willful finding. You handed them the case. Ping. She's not answering. She's just staring at her hands. She finally understands. It was the perfect circle. The line she'd used to threaten me, to fire me, had become the legal justification for her own company's destruction. The blade she had swung had come back and severed her own head. Ping. Garrett is asking for the document. The one-page retraction. The one from the debrief room. Ping. He's signing it. The board member with the tortoise-shell frames is co-signing. Karen is signing as witness. Ping. I can hear the pens squeaking in the hush. Ping. It's done. Full acknowledgement. Full retraction. It's ours. I put my phone in my pocket. I turned away from the window, back to my desk. My 9 a.m. meeting was here. Rhina was at the door, her laptop in her hand, looking nervous and excited about her patent. An hour later, my phone pinged one last time. It was an automated notification, a Google alert, for Noventrix. It was the link to their investor relations page. The two-sentence ethical innovation note was gone. In its place was the full public clarification, the one Nora had drafted. It stated that all projects known as Orbital and Route Light were terminated. It stated that all foundational intellectual property for these initiatives was the sole and exclusive property of its inventor, Ms. Bella Phillips. My name, in bold, their products, in the past tense. I pocketed the phone. I looked out over the glass city of Vervant Labs, the clear walls, the servers humming with trust. I didn't smile. I didn't raise a glass. It wasn't triumph. It was just completion. The end of a long, complex calculation. I whispered it to myself, to the quiet, clean room. Resignation accepted. Checkmate delivered. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm always curious to know where these stories land. So please comment below and let me know where in the world you're tuning in from. Let's connect and share our own thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. And if you really want to support this work, hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people. Your support means everything.